before Libya's gold disappeared, before Gaddafi was taken down. This same pattern had already been tested in Iraq, and almost nobody talks about it. In 2003, as Baghdad burned and Saddam Hussein's regime collapsed on live television, something far more valuable than oil was quietly slipping into the shadows. Iraq's gold, entire reserves worth billions, vanished without a trace. No official report, no inventory, no global outrage. Just silence. Yet eyewitnesses described unmarked military convoys moving sealed crates through the green zone, guarded by units with no badges and no explanations. To this day, not a single transparent audit exists. So here is the real question. If Libya's gold story shocked you, what if the blueprint began in Iraq? And what if both nations were targeted for the same hidden reason? Let's uncover the truth. Baghdad didn't just fall, it was stripped naked in real time. On April 9, 2003, as millions watched Saddam's statue collapse, something far more dangerous was happening off-camera. The world saw liberation. Iraqis on the ground saw law collapse in a single afternoon. Government ministries burned with almost surgical precision, always the same type of buildings: finance, intelligence, archives, oil, communications. Not random, targeted, and just hours after US forces entered the capital, the city's entire security structure evaporated. Police vanished, military units dissolved, doors to Iraq's most sensitive facilities were kicked open, not by confused civilians, but by people who moved like they knew exactly where the real assets were kept. Inside the central bank district, surveillance cameras went dark, electricity cut, records destroyed, and witnesses reported unmarked trucks, escorted by armored vehicles, entering vault zones with sealed orders. Nobody checked the manifests, nobody asked questions. They didn't have to. While ordinary Iraqis looted televisions and furniture, someone else was looting a nation. Oil fields were seized, intelligence files disappeared. And in the middle of this orchestrated chaos, Iraq's gold reserves, the backbone of Saddam's financial sovereignty, became the easiest target on earth. Because in war, there is one rule every empire understands. The moment a nation loses its government, its wealth becomes fair game. And in Baghdad, that moment lasted long enough for a heist of historic scale. Now let's look at what Iraq actually had, and why it mattered. If you're following this story so far, make sure you like this video and subscribe. We're just getting into the part they never wanted the world to know. Before the invasion, Iraq held one of the Middle East's strongest gold reserves, a financial shield Saddam Hussein believed would protect the country from Western pressure. These reserves were not symbolic, they were strategic. Gold allowed Iraq to bypass the dollar, withstand sanctions, and trade with countries that refused to bow to Washington. By 2003, Iraq had accumulated hundreds of tons of gold, stored across multiple high-security locations. The Central Bank of Iraq, underground bunkers, and military-controlled vaults designed to survive airstrikes. Saddam understood one thing clearly. As long as Iraq held its gold, it held its independence. But gold wasn't the only treasure that made Iraq a target. With one of the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, the country represented energy dominance in the region. The world focused on oil. Bush's administration claimed the invasion was about freedom. Yet behind that public narrative, something else was quietly happening. Even Iraq's National Museum was looted within 48 hours, not by random thieves, but by professionals who headed straight for priceless Mesopotamian artifacts. It was a signal. The valuables of Iraq were being targeted on every level. But gold was different. It was the one asset that could shift global power, strengthen or weaken currencies, and fund a nation even under sanctions. And it was the asset that disappeared with the least explanation. Because as Baghdad fell, Iraq's gold reserves didn't just go missing. They were moved deliberately and with knowledge of their exact value. And the question is, moved by whom? And for what purpose? As Baghdad descended into chaos, a different kind of movement began, quiet, coordinated, and completely off the public record. Soldiers stationed near the Green Zone later described seeing unmarked trucks, escorted by armored vehicles with no identifiable unit patches, slipping in and out of restricted areas at night. These convoys weren't carrying food, medical supplies, or civilians. They were hauling sealed crates that no one was allowed to inspect. Orders came from, but no officer could say exactly how high. Some reports claimed the convoys were operating under classified directives from Coalition Command, bypassing even senior Iraqi administrators brought in after the fall of Saddam. Others said the crates were loaded directly from central bank vaults, under heavy guard, with no manifest, no receipts, no witnesses, no chain of custody. Something was being extracted from Baghdad while the world was focused on burning buildings and televised celebrations. And every soldier who saw those convoys said the same thing. Whatever they were moving, they didn't want anyone to know. These weren't rescue missions. They weren't humanitarian runs. They were asset movements conducted with military precision and absolute secrecy. But what exactly was inside those sealed crates, and why has no official audit ever accounted for them? The answer lies in the paper trail that vanished next. If the convoys were the hands of the operation, the paperwork was supposed to be the memory. But in Iraq's case, that memory was erased. Within days of Baghdad's fall, the central bank's financial records, decades of gold inventories, shipment logs, reserve statements, and transfer authorizations, either burned, disappeared, or were sealed under classified Western oversight. Hard drives were wiped. Servers removed. Entire accounting departments found their archives missing when they returned to work. International auditors requested access, but coalition authorities claimed the documents were unavailable due to security concerns. To this day, no independent verification exists for what was taken, moved, or allegedly secured for protection. Even more suspicious, post-war reconstruction offices reported billions in Iraqi assets labeled as untraceable. Not stolen, untraceable. A country with one of the most documented economies in the region suddenly had no record of its own wealth. And that raises the real question. If the paper trail vanished, was it destroyed or was it removed to hide something bigger? When a nation collapses, someone always steps in to pick up the pieces and the profits. In Iraq's case, the beneficiaries didn't arrive with flags or declarations. They arrived with contracts, private security teams, and exclusive access to the very assets that had gone missing. Within months of the invasion, a small circle of international actors gained control over Iraq's frozen funds, reconstruction budgets, and external reserves. Powerful institutions suddenly had authority to manage Iraqi wealth, while private contractors, some linked to Western intelligence networks, handled transportation and storage of sensitive materials. Oil fields were transferred to foreign operators. The central bank was advised by consultants with deep ties to Wall Street. And the gold? No official claimed custody, no inventory was released. Yet global financial reports showed unusual spikes in foreign-held reserves that were never explained. It was as if Iraq's wealth had been quietly redistributed into a system designed to absorb it without trace. Not illegal, not admitted, just absorbed. And here's the disturbing part. The same institutions that gained influence in Iraq would later play key roles in Libya, following almost the same sequence, the same silence, and the same disappearance of national wealth. Which forces us to ask, was this coincidence or a perfected strategy? World wasn't paying attention. 8 years later, the same sequence unfolded in Libya with frightening precision. A leader resisting Western pressure, a nation building massive gold reserves, a plan to establish financial independence outside the US dollar. Suddenly, sanctions, isolation, demonization, and a military assault, this time openly led by NATO. Just like Iraq, Libya's central bank was one of the first institutions targeted. Just like Iraq, foreign forces moved in under the banner of protection and humanitarian intervention. And just like Iraq, Libya's gold reserves disappeared from public view with no transparent audit released to this day. Two different countries, two different leaders, two different justifications. But the pattern was identical. Remove the government, collapse the institutions, seize control of national wealth, and rewrite the narrative before the world understands what happened. What vanished in Iraq was explained away as chaos. What vanished in Libya was buried under the fog of war. But when you place the timelines side by side, a disturbing question emerges. If Iraq was the blueprint, was Libya the perfected version of the same strategy? When you trace the events in Iraq and Libya, these were not isolated conflicts or accidents of history. They were operations targeting nations that attempted to build financial independence outside Western-controlled systems. Saddam planned to bypass the dollar. Gaddafi planned a gold-backed African currency. Both leaders amassed massive gold reserves to protect their sovereignty. And in both cases, the same sequence followed. Destabilize the leadership, paralyze the institutions, seize control of national wealth, erase the paper trail, rewrite the narrative for global consumption. Whether framed as liberation, democracy, or humanitarian intervention, the result was identical. Nations that challenged the financial order lost not only their governments, they lost their gold. And the beneficiaries were the same institutions, the same networks, the same actors moving quietly in the background of global power. This is not about Iraq alone, nor Libya alone. It's about what happens when a nation tries to step outside the rules set by the world's financial gatekeepers. Because once you understand this pattern, the final question becomes unavoidable. If this strategy succeeded in Iraq and Libya, where will it be tested next? Iraq's story didn't end with the fall of Baghdad. Libya's story didn't end with the fall of Tripoli. Their real stories live in what was taken, what was hidden, and what the world was never meant to question. Gold was not just a metal for these nations, it was independence, leverage, and a shield against foreign domination. And when that shield was removed, their futures were rewritten by forces far beyond their borders. Today, the same pressures are being applied across Africa and the global south. Sanctions, isolation, destabilization, and sudden interest in regime change, whenever a nation steps outside the economic script written by the West. You don't need to guess the pattern anymore. Iraq showed the blueprint, Libya confirmed it, and the consequences should concern every country fighting for sovereignty. Because once a nation loses control of its wealth, it loses control of its destiny. And once external powers taste success in one region, they rarely stop there. So the warning is clear. The Iraq model and the Libya model were not historical accidents. They were demonstrations of what happens when a country tries to build a future that doesn't serve global interests. And somewhere, right now, the next target is already being measured. If you've watched this far, then you already understand one truth. Stories like Iraq's are never really about the headlines. They're about the hidden hands that move nations, shape destinies, and silence the truth behind closed doors. Iraq's gold did not vanish by accident, its future did not collapse by coincidence, and its lessons should never be forgotten. But this is only the beginning. Because every time we dig deeper, new evidence, new testimonies, and new unanswered questions keep emerging, especially about Iraq's wealth, its missing billions, and the secret operations that were never meant to surface. So stay alert, because if this video performs well, we will return to Iraq and uncover the parts of the story the world still isn't ready to talk about. If you value this kind of deep investigative storytelling, like the video and help push it forward. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next investigation. Leave a comment to boost engagement. And most importantly, hit the new hype button to push this video toward going viral. You can hype up to 3 times a week, so hype it now. If you want to support the channel further, you can send super thanks or gifts. It truly helps. And don't forget to share this video. Together, we make these stories impossible to silence.